In this video, we're gonna analyze how BBC and ABC reports news differently. There are three different news that we're gonna analyze. The first news is the death of Osama bin Laden in 2011. It's highly related to the US and Americans were happy about it. We will compare how BBC and ABC reported differently. The second news is the christening of Prince George in 2013. It's highly related to the UK, important event of Britain. Well, sad news for Charles of course, and we'll show how BBC and ABC reported differently. The third news is the earthquake in Japan in 2011. It's not directly related to America nor Britain. It's a neutral news, so how did BBC and ABC report it differently? We're gonna discover it in the video, so stay tuned. The first piece of news that we look at is about Osama bin Laden's death. Though in this pair of reports, ABC has not shown a higher frequency in its rises and stresses, it still sounds more changes in intonation due to its faster speaking speed. First, for intonation, BBC employs a flat tone on the whole, whereas ABC constantly employs rise and fall of intonation to indicate the shared sentiments of national triumph. On ABC, see the rise of tone here.
But now with the word of Osama bin Laden, they came back to ground zero to remember their loved ones.
The rise in intonation presents the American solidarity in celebrating the US triumph, hence evoke the empathy of the audience. Great national prestige of the United States. Notice the falling tone here.
Police were trying to keep people at bay and then police were just like, come on in.
The falling tone shows that even the police gave up on keeping order because they too understand the necessity to release people's ecstasy on bin Laden's death. As ABC mentioned that
The police knew, everybody knew, and we needed this here.
in addition, ABC utilizes pauses to dramatize the importance of tonight's celebration of national triumph. For example,
Tonight is about pride.
but BBC adopts pauses and emphasis to highlight key words and for clear delivery, hence their flat tone.
That Osama bin Laden had been found and had been killed in a mansion outside of Islamabad, the Pakistan.
These keywords indicate social differential stance of BBC and ABC, while ABC simply painted an epic triumph that brings the nation prestige. BBC embedded a warning of the US true intentions. See the patriotic vocabulary used by ABC, such as celebrate triumph, profound sense of satisfaction, all things America. And BBC utilizing sarcastic phrases such as dramatic late-night address, so-called war on terror. BBC has used a controversial term, war on terror, as it represents USA's self-imposed mission by Bush-Afri terrorist group of global reach, while linguist George Lakoff suggested that terror, an abstract noun, cannot be stopped by physical weapons, so it has no end. This term may imply BBC's mockery on America's continuous intervention into other countries' business. All in all, ABC has shown its focus on the American patriotism, while BBC implies an ironic tone in their vocabulary choice. The second piece of news we look at is on British royalty, Prince George's christening. In general, it's obvious BBC reports with a flat tone and a serious manner, while ABC is happier and livelier and has more variety in intonation. An evident example is the difference the way they say the phrase big day.
And it was his big day.
A big day for a little prince.
Surprisingly, BBC adopts a dropping tone at the end, making the manner very calm, while ABC puts a stress on the first word, making it sharp and clear to hear. One interesting thing to discover is that BBC did not rise in tone to close the question.
What else?
It is noticeable that ABC has a higher frequency of using stressors in the excerpts compared, as ABC has approximately 3.5 stressors compared to one that BBC has in 10 seconds. Also, ABC tends to rise more not before commas. The differences in stresses and rises make ABC have more changes in intonation and sound more lively to the audience.
Around the third in line to the throne were the second in line to the throne, his father, who was carrying him, the first in line to the throne, otherwise known as his grandfather, the Prince of Wales, and the throne herself, as it were, the Queen.
As for George's godparents, William and Kate choosing 7 in total, college and school buddies, a royal cousin.
Concerning the content of this piece of happy royal news, BBC puts more emphasis on the monarch's succession by repeating the word throne. It tried to be more accurate when telling the backgrounds of the chosen godparents, while ABC reports with a more relaxed tone and uses more casual words like college buddies. And now we're going to talk about the third news. Again, we are going to compare intonation, stresses, rises, pauses, and also the choice of words between BBC and ABC reporters. In general, BBC reporters are more serious and solemn in terms of tone as reflected in its lack of variation in stresses and rises. They also tend to speak in a slower tempo. On the contrary, ABC reporters sound more emotional and intense since frequent stresses and rises are observed when reporting news. Reporters of ABC also speak in a faster tempo when comparing to BBC reporters. In terms of stresses, BBC reporters have comparatively fewer stresses. They only focus their stresses on important nouns which they want to emphasize, like the word nowhere in the clip.
The terrifying moment when it all began. A super earthquake and nowhere to hide.
In comparison, ABC reporters tend to use more stressors to highlight verbs and important figure when it reports the figure such as 500 miles per hour, about the speed of the tsunami, as well as back and forth for half an hour of the aftershock duration.
The quake unleashes 3 massive tsunami waves that hurtle toward the coast of Japan at speeds of up to 500 miles per hour. Buildings in Tokyo swayed back and forth for half an hour as powerful aftershocks rocked the island nation.
In terms of rises, BBC reporters use more rises than the ABC reporters. There are 9 rises observed in the chosen time slot in the selected part of the BBC News. ABC reporters tend to use fewer rises than stresses to highlight the functional word that carry important message. For example, the reporter puts stresses on the words crushed and ground in the clip.
Debris from buildings crashed to the ground.
Reporters of the 2 channels also show difference in the use of pauses. BBC reporters tend to have pauses after logical connectives like and then. It is also observed that BBC News generally have small pauses than ABC.
And then an even greater horror, a tsunami that sent a giant wall of water racing.
ABC reporters tend to have fewer pauses when compared to the BBC reporters, as news are reported in faster tempo. Obvious pauses only occur before emotional words such as confusion and panic. Last but not least, in terms of choice of words, less emotive adjectives are observed from the BBC News report, while ABC News report tends to use more emotive adjectives to report the event. For example, adjectives such as confusion and panic are used to describe the victim's reaction in face of the chaotic situation caused by the falling of debris during the earthquake. The table here summarizes the founding in the above.